Good evening and welcome to the City of Helena City Commission meeting, September 26, 2022, 6 p.m. This meeting is called to order. Welcome and thank you for participating in the City of Helena City Commission meeting. We are pleased to be able to provide this alternative meeting format in the city's effort to broaden public participation. Please be patient as we may experience technical difficulties during the meeting. We welcome your public commentary. Please read the following tips and guidelines for the app usage and your participation. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll, please?
City Attorney Doctor.
Here.
Interim City Manager Burton.
Here.
Commissioner Shirtliff.
Here.
Commissioner Reed.
Here.
Commissioner Logan.
Here.
Mayor Collins.
Here.
And for the record, Mr. Mayor, Commissioner Dean is excused this evening.
That's correct. Would you rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. With consensus, we will be moving item on the consent agenda, item B into regular items. No objection. Okay. All right, presentation. And we didn't put this up front, so we would like the baby to stay the full meeting if she can. So we like that sound. But approve the confirmation of Officer Vittorio Altinelli. Chief Petty, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Commission.
Good evening.
Thank you for allowing tonight for this presentation. Tonight, I have an officer that has successfully completed their one-year probationary period with the Helena Police Department. At the end of the probationary period and under Montana state law, the appointment of the officer must be submitted to the City Commission. And if the appointment is confirmed by the City Commission, then the officer becomes a member of our police force. With this said, I'm seeking a vote from the Commission to confirm this officer tonight. Prior to having the Commission vote on the officer's confirmation, and if I may, I'd like to introduce this officer and give a brief bio of who he is and where he comes from.
Please.
Thank you. I'd like to introduce the Commission and the community. This is Officer Vittorio Altinelli. Not an easy name to say, but we'll get there. Officer Altinelli is originally from Florida. He earned his undergraduate degree from Colgate University while also playing collegiate football for the Colgate Raiders. After receiving his undergrad degree at Colgate, he attended the University of Montana and earned a master's degree. Officer Altinelli is currently commissioned in the United States Army as of 2017. After being deployed to the Middle East for a year, he joined the Helena Police Department. Officer Altinelli lives in the Helena Valley with his wife, eight-month-old daughter, and 3 dogs. We're very thankful. Yep, she agrees. We're very thankful Officer Altinelli chose Helena to raise his family and work for the City of Helena. I'd like to officially welcome Officer Altinelli and his family to the Helena PD family. And now with the introduction of Officer Altinelli, I'd like to ask you, Mayor, and the Commission, if you would have a chance to speak to you briefly, of course. We encourage that on this side as well. So if you don't mind.
Please.
Mayor?
You can raise it.
Oh, yeah, I can raise it up a little bit. Well, actually, I had a thank you speech prep, so I'll go ahead and do that. First and foremost, a general once told me that if your speech is 5 minutes, you're 3 minutes too long, so I'll keep it short. First and foremost, I'd like to thank my wife. After coming home, being gone for a year, I ended up telling her that I got hired by the Helena Police Department, and I'd be gone for 4 months at the Montana Law Enforcement Academy, and she held down the fort, and she managed 3 dogs all while being pregnant. So, love and thank you. Also, I'd like to go ahead and thank Chief Petty for taking a chance on me. And if everything goes well tonight, I'd like to thank the City Commission and Mayor for allowing me to serve my city. That's it.
That was a minute and a half, Joe.
Oh. I beat it, yeah.
Go ahead, chief.
So, thank you. Nice speech. With that, I would like to ask the commission to move to approve the confirmation of Officer Ottinelli.
Thank you, chief. I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor. Oh,
Go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I'd like to move to approve the confirmation of Officer Vittorio Ottinelli.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Shertliff,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Let's give him a round of applause. Welcome to the family. All right, consent agenda would be doing one motion. Acceptance of universal system benefits grant from Northwestern Energy. And approve final passage of an ordinance amending the official zoning map for the city of Helena that changes the zoning district from R2 residential to R3 residential for properties legally described as a tract of land located in the southeast of the northeast section 23, Township 10 North Range 4 WPMM, and all of lot 1 through 8 of block 171 of the syndicate addition to the city of Helena as shown on COS 484404. City of Helena, Lewis and Clark County, Montana. These properties are located at 1625 and 1655 Jocelyn Street, and a tract of land in the southeast and northeast of section 23, Township 10 North Range 4 WMPW, described more fully in the Book of Deeds. Book 271, page 770. This property is located at 1805 Jocelyn Street. Commission discussion? Public comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr.
Mr.
Mayor,
Mayor. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Logan.
thank you. Mr. Mayor, I would move acceptance of consent agenda items A and C.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Shertliff,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-0.
Bid award for the solar project at the City of Helena Transportation Shop. Manager Anderson and Public Works Director Leland, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, Commission. This is going to be our first major sustainability project for energy. We were able to get a grant that you just accepted with the consent agenda for $50,000. It was from Northwestern Energy. So that this is going to be a great project. And then also there was $90,000 budgeted previously to get a sustainability project going. So combined, we have $140,000 to get this project taken care of. We have bid this project and we received 2 bids, and the lowest responsible bid was from Green Build Inc. of Bozeman, and in an amount of $121,614. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Director Leland. Comments or questions from the commission? Public comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I would move to award the bid for the solar project at the City of Helena Transportation Shop. Oops, I don't have the to the responsible bidder that Director Leland suggested.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion from the commission? Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Shertliff,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Communications proposals from commissioners. Anything from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I do, if.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, just a brief report or update to the commission and to the public. The subcommittee that's been working on the recruitment of the city manager, the recruitment process, has been meeting since I think we were formed in June. We, and it is comprised of myself and Mayor Collins, and we met on Friday. And if you recall, we engaged a company called CMS, Communication and Management Services of Helena, to initially provide us an assessment of the previous city manager recruitment processes. And we met with them on Friday, and they went over their final draft. We've still got some internal review before we make the document public, but I think what the assessment consisted of was a series of interviews with department heads and commissioners to get feedback on the two previous manager recruitment processes, and so they're just about done, and we should have a final product that we can release to the public within the next couple of weeks or so. So we're making progress.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Sure.
Yes, at our last meeting, we inadvertently left out Dr. Gregory Thomas had a comment to make, and we want to publicly apologize because we didn't provide the opportunity for him to make that comment. And if Dr. Thomas is on the line, we want you to know we are sincerely sorry. And if you want to make that comment right now or wait until at the end, you can do so. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Dr. Thomas does not have his hand raised at this time.
Okay, please make sure when he raises his hand, we will acknowledge it. Thank you. Report of the city attorney.
Mayor, Commissioners, I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Report of the city manager.
Mayor, I have nothing to report this evening.
Thank you. Communications from Helena Citizens Council. Representative Nancy Perry, you have the floor. Madam Clerk, is she on?
Okay, can you hear me now, sir?
Yes, we can.
All right. Hello, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Nancy Perry from District 2. It's a pleasure to see you all, including our new Commissioner, Andy Shertliff. Congratulations, sir. I want to talk very briefly about a recommendation that we sent to the Commission on September 1st. At our August 24th meeting, we received a presentation about the proposed passenger rail service connecting Helena to other population centers in central and southern Montana and beyond. And since 1979, residents of Helena have had to drive several hours north to catch the train on the only passenger line in the state, the Amtrak Empire Builder, which runs along the High Line between Chicago and the West Coast. After listening to the presentation, we voted to recommend to the city that you support any efforts, be it Amtrak, government-sponsored or private, to reestablish passenger rail service along the present BNSF Montana Rail Link route, connecting Helena with its sister cities along southern Montana. While that passenger rail service has not happened yet, it appears that there's increased interest. In 2020, the Big Sky Passenger Rail Authority was established via a joint resolution signed by the boards of county commissioners of 13 Montana counties. Lewis and Clark County was not one of them. HCC is recommending that the city urge the county commissioners that they support those efforts, reestablishing a passenger rail service using existing rails that are currently only being used for freight train traffic. An awful lot of freight trains run through Helena every we hope that the commission agrees with us that it would be a real boon to the economy of the region, not to mention a great convenience for Helena residents, if passenger trains could share those tracks. And that is all I've got.
Thank you, Ms. Perry. Okay, regular items. We'll now move on to page 1 for the item B. Approval of a resolution authorizing the approval of the program's guidelines and application process document to guide disbursement of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Mr. Manager, okay. You have the floor. Chris, Mr. Briggs.
Thank you, Mayor Collins. Good evening, Commissioners.
Evening.
We appreciate you removing that from the consent agenda only to give us an opportunity to celebrate what we hope you will approve here shortly. And that is a culmination of a lot of work by this individual right next to me, Kara Snyder, our housing coordinator. In 2020, in November, Mayor and Commission passed resolution supporting and setting up the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. This is a culmination of that initial resolution. Tonight, I want to turn it over to Kara. She'll give some brief synopsis of that program and available for any questions. And hopefully she'll avail herself to perhaps give some updates on next steps and where we are in terms of starting that application process. Okay.
Mayor, Commissioners, I actually don't have too much for you tonight, but I did just want to acknowledge all the work that has happened before me as well. So I feel like I get to step into this role and carry it through to the end, but certainly wouldn't want to miss the moment to acknowledge everyone else's work that has come before me. So we discussed the program guidelines and the application process on September 7th, and I'm happy to be back here to hopefully take the next step forward in that process. And as we all know, Helena has not been immune to the housing crisis, which has been magnified by the pandemic. This fund will go a long way towards helping organizations in our community continue to do the work that they're doing right now. If this resolution is passed, it means that the City of Helena will be able to open the first application round for this fund, which currently totals $2,143,000. If you have any questions, I would love to take those.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Go ahead,
Not a
Commissioner.
question. Thank you. I just wanted to acknowledge also the work of everyone who has been a part of this process so far. The previous commission for moving this forward, including some of our existing commissioners and everyone who's worked on it. I'm very happy to see this on our agenda and very much looking forward to voting on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any others? Do we have any public comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I'd like to move approval of the resolution authorizing the approval of the program guidelines and application process documents to guide disbursement of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion from the commission? Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Shertliff,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, we can do that.
Thank you. Hopefully that wasn't for me. I did want to announce, and Kara failed to mention, we will be opening up applications starting October the 3rd is when we'll start accepting applications. So tonight's that formal announcement. Tomorrow we'll start pushing that out through social media and all of our agencies that are responsible for affordable housing. But first applications, we'll start that round October 3rd.
Thank you, Director Brings. Consider a resolution annexing the Craftsman Village Phase 7 of the Crossroad at Mountain View Meadow subdivision in Lewis and Clark County into the city of Helena, Montana. Planning Coordinator Ray, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to jump into that. I
do realize that there is also regular item A. I have the next 3 items, so I'm happy to go in whichever order you prefer.
Oh, geez, you're right. We'll go back to a regular item A. Consider the Railroad Urban Renewal District Work Plan for fiscal year 23 and its associated application documentation as recommended by the Railroad Tiff Advisory Board. Planner Ray, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Commissioners, on August 18th, the Railroad Urban Renewal District Advisory Board met and voted unanimously in support of a revised work plan. The last time they updated one of these documents was, I believe, in 2018 off the top of my head. And so they reviewed all of the Urban Renewal District Plan goals and objectives, ranked them, and as part of that exercise, came up with 7 priority areas for funding. They include affordable housing projects, and this would be in alignment with the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that was just discussed. Infrastructure improvements throughout the district, transportation planning studies, demolition activities similar to the one that took place recently for Memorial Park Apartments, historic facade and site improvements, of which we've seen many in the downtown and will welcome in the Railroad District too. Marketing and branding activities, and last but not least, land use planning activities similar to the neighborhood planning effort that is about to commence in the area, and then any future zoning changes that might occur. All of these applications would still be eligible for match of up to 50% from the city's fund. And these priority areas, just to clarify, basically are the ones that we're most likely to try to solicit applications from, but it doesn't discount the other ones that are stated in the Urban Renewal District Plan. If any come forward related to those items, they can also be considered for funding. These 7 areas, however, would just receive priority in funding. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Planner Ray. Comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. I just want to thank Planner Ray and all the members of the board. I know this is not easy to update all these documents and going through them. It's a lot of work. It's great to see the update. It's great to see the priorities, and I'm looking forward to seeing things moving through that TIF board. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments from the commission? Do we have any public comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I would move acceptance of the Railroad Urban Renewal District Work Plan for FY 23 and its associated application documentation as recommended by the Railroad TIF Advisory Board.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion from the commission? Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Shertliff,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-0.
Consider resolution annexing Craftsman Village Phase 7 of the Crossroad at Mountain View Meadows subdivision in Lewis and Clark County in the city of Helena, Montana. Planner Ray, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. Can you see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. Okay, so before you tonight is consideration of the annexation request for Craftsman Village Phase 7 at the Crossroads amendment portion of the Mountain View Meadows subdivision. These slides to advance. There we go. So this vicinity map shows you bordered in red the approximate location of the area in question for this latest phase of annexation at Mountain View Meadows. The annexation request is for area that is generally located east of Teagan Street, and it will encompass properties that will be addressed between Adam Run Avenue to the north, Jean Bacchus Street in the east, and Jeanette Rankin Drive in the south. Preliminary plat approval and a resolution of annexation, intent to annex, pardon me, were obtained in May of 2012. At the same time, there was also pre-zoning that moved forward. And the subject property is approximately 9.678 acres. It is undeveloped, as is much of the land that's to the north and to the east of the property. Those areas are currently located in Lewis and Clark County's urban residential mixed use district, and they're vacant. To the south, there is some R4 zoned city property that is comprised of single family dwelling units. There's also some additional vacant county land, and to the west, there is R4 zoned single-family residential units as well. At the time of the resolution of intention to annex passage, there were conditions of approval that were set forth for the annexation. I'm just going to cover off the ones that are actually relevant to the present phase of annexation. The first is related to city services, and it stated that each annexation phase for the Crossroads Amendment had to assure that it was had approved city infrastructure. This area is immediately east of the Crossroads Village Phase 6 annexation that was approved last summer. And for the current phase, interim acceptance has already been established for the installed infrastructure that was received on June 30th this year. There was a financial guarantee that was recently executed as of the middle of last week as well for all of the remaining infrastructural improvements. Another condition was that a legal description be provided for each phase. There was one provided with this application for phase 7. With regard to the review of new construction, the owner is required to submit plans to the city in compliance with all adopted city codes. And this does include building and fire codes and zoning codes. An interim acceptance, as stated, has been received, as well as the financial guarantee having been executed. Any future development, any construction activities that require building permits will be required to adhere to all adopted city codes. Again, that does include zoning, building codes, fire codes. With regard to taxes and assessments, they must be current and paid for the property in question. The applicant has paid all taxes on this phase of the development. With regard to notice of special districts, the property owner must waive the right to notification and protest and consent to the alteration of the urban forest maintenance district and the landfill monitoring district. And they have done so with this present application. And finally, with regard to the final plat, the property owner must meet all of the conditions of the Crossroads Amendment at Mountain View Meadows subdivision preliminary plat, which will be the next item on the agenda. They have submitted all of that information and they have met all of those conditions of approval. Consequently, Crossroads Village Phase 7 has met all the conditions of annexation that were set forth in Resolution 19911 in 2012. And the recommendation before you tonight is to move to approve a resolution annexing the Crossroads Village Phase 7 of the Crossroads at Mountain View Meadows subdivision in Lewis and Clark County into the city of Helena, Montana. If you have any questions of myself or Director Brink, we're happy to answer them. Additionally, both the applicant Mark Runkle and the applicant's representative Greg Worth should be in chambers with you this evening or joining remotely.
Thank you, Planner Ray. Comments or questions from the commission? Any public comments?
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Greg Worth, WIRTH with Staley Engineering at 3530 Centennial Drive. I'd like to thank Ellie for her hard work in preparing the presentation and the final plat annexation process. Also, the city attorney's office. There's a fair amount of legal documents that go into this process, and the engineering department for their assistance in the project. To be efficient with my time, I also will speak on the subdivision portion of the project, which is subsequent to the annexation, as long as I have the floor. So the annexation and subsequent subdivision will create 40 single-family residential lots located immediately east of the Crossroads Village Phase 6 project that was platted in 2021 last year, and immediately north of the Crossroads Village Phase 4 project platted in 2018. The resolution intent annexed by resolution 19911, all 8 conditions have been satisfied. Preliminary plat approval was on May 7th of 2012, and all 19 conditions have been satisfied for the subdivision. The parkland with the project was provided with the remaining bank of the large Mountain View Park, and then a nominal cash in lieu amount to make up the difference. On the project, interim acceptance has been received for the underground utilities, the storm, water mains, and sanitary sewer. The remaining portions have been financially guaranteed to allow final platting. The curb and gutter and asphalt is installed on the project right now. The plat creates much needed workforce housing in the Helena market. Mountain View Meadows has been the primary supplier of owner occupied housing in the city limits. Each Craftsman Village home contributes approximately $4,000 in yearly taxes in the city of Helena. And with that, we request approval. We reviewed the staff report, concur with the analysis and recommendation for the annexation and the final plat. Mountain View Meadows has received a great amount of interest, and the final plat will allow immediate home construction. I'm available to answer any questions, and also Mr. Mark Runkle, Mountain View Meadows, is in attendance and available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Worth. Do we have any other comments, public comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I move to approve a resolution annexing the Craftsman Village Phase 7 of the Crossroads at Mountain View Meadows subdivision in Lewis and Clark County into the city of Helena, Montana.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion? Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Shertliff,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-0.
Charlie, consider the final plat for the Craftsman Village Phase 7 major subdivision, creating 40 lots and streets right of way from approximately 9.678 acres, and to accept the dedication to the city of the property and public improvements as designated thereon for property legally described as a 9.67 acre portion of track A1, as shown on certificate of survey 3386391 in the records of clerk and the recorder of Lewis and Clark County, Montana. Planner Ray, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I feel like following my first presentation and Greg Worth's public comment, there isn't a whole bunch to add, so I will do my best to pare this down for you. So again, as was mentioned, we're discussing the final plat of Craftsman Village Phase 7, same location as was presented for the annexation of the property. As Greg mentioned, there are 40 residential lots that will be created with this final plat. And as was mentioned also by Greg, the preliminary plat set forth conditions of approval and the findings of fact that were dated May 7th, 2021. Once again, I will just cover off the ones that are relevant to the present phase, since the document reflects the entirety of the Crossroads Amendment. So the first pertains to local services. As was noted in my prior presentation, though, the project, it's adjacent to existing city limits, and the infrastructure that is needed for this development, it's not dependent on other phases. And all of the infrastructure that's required to serve it has either been installed or financially guaranteed. With regard to transportation, at the time that preliminary plat was being sought, there were some issues with the street names as proposed. They have since been revised and approved by the county's addressing coordinator, and signs were installed as of September 9th, 2020. Bike pedestrian paths are required as part of the overall development, and sidewalks are a key component of that. All sidewalks will be installed with the procurement of building permits. And there is also a bike pedestrian path that will run along Alpine View Drive that has been financially guaranteed. With regard to water and wastewater, all of the relevant infrastructure is in the right-of-way or will be placed into easements that will be recorded on the final plat. There are mains that have been extended through this phase of annexation in compliance with Helena City codes. Interim acceptance, as was previously mentioned, has been received, as well as the financial guarantee having been executed last week. With regard to stormwater infrastructure, specifically, all stormwater facilities will be located within the right-of-way or in easements that are transferred to the city. The Mountain View Meadows subdivision as a whole has regional stormwater ponds that have been transferred to the city and are monitored by the city's Public Works Department in accordance with the city's MS4 permitting requirements. And last but not least, with respect to the natural environment and related to the stormwater, the regional detention ponds have been dedicated with earlier phases. And there are presently no encroachments in existence. So as Greg Worth had previously mentioned, I can affirm that the applicant has met all of the conditions for approval for the final plat of Craftsman Village Phase 7. I do want to note before I read off the recommended motion language for this evening that last Monday there was an amended plat recorded that altered the parent tract name that you see in the vicinity map highlighted in blue. So there is an additional letter tacked on to the end of the tract. So it's different than what you previously had received with your packet information. And related to that, the certificate of survey that it's referenced on has changed. So I have highlighted those in the PowerPoint that you're viewing so that you have it as a reference. So with that said, the recommendation is to move to approve the final plat for the Craftsman Village Phase 7 major subdivision, creating 40 lots in street rights of way from approximately 9.678 acres, and to accept the dedication to the city of the property and public improvements so designated thereon for property legally described as a 9.678 acre portion of tract A1, 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 A1A, as shown on certificate of survey 3044083 in the records of the clerk and recorder of Lewis and Clark County, Montana. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Comments or questions from the commission? Do we have any public comments? Madam Clerk. Oh, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Michael O'Neill. I live at 621 Hillsdale Street. I was here this evening, so I just thought I'd come and speak in support of this proposal and urge your approval, but more just make a statement of appreciation of Mr. Runkle and his wife and the developers there of building a subdivision as he is slowly with a vision that recognizes the importance of community and making a place where everyone can have a home, and building complete streets, open space, and really is I have great gratitude what he's contributing to our community. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Do we have any other public comments? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor. Oh, go ahead, Linda.
Commissioner,
Go ahead.
it's all yours.
Go ahead, Commissioner Reed.
I felt bad that Commissioner Logan always has to do the ones with the 47 letters. So I was going to take a turn and hope I get it right. So here we go. I move to approve the final plat for the Craftsman Village Phase 7 major subdivision, creating 40 lots and street right-of-way from approximately 9.678 acres, and to accept the dedication to the city of the property and public improvements so designated thereon for property legally described as a 9.678 acre portion of tract A1, 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 A1A, as shown on certificate of survey 3044083 in the records of the clerk and recorder of Lewis and Clark County, Montana.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion from the commission? Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Shertliff,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Approval of a resolution authorizing the approval of the program guidelines and application. I thought we did this. Is that something else? Okay, yeah, sorry. Public hearings. A final passage of an ordinance adopting by reference the current and future state adopted edition of the International Building Code and the International Residential Code, the International Energy Conservation Code, the International Existing Building Code, the Uniform Plumbing Code, the National Electrical Code, the International Mechanical Code, the International Fuel Gas Code, and the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code. Director Brink and or Chief Building Official Mac, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Collins and Commissioners. Tonight is the culmination of a 30-day review period and comment period for those codes that you referenced. And this is final passage of that ordinance. As you know, as we've had discussions, we've readdressed how we will adopt these codes moving forward in the future. This will be one and one time only. After this, it's adopted by reference after the state adopts their code changes. So no need to readopt or reopen the city code to make these changes.
Thank you, Director Brink. Any discussion from the commission? Do we have any public comments? Madam Clerk. Oh, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll take this one. I move to consider final passage of ordinance adopting by reference the current and future state adopted editions of the International Building Code IBC, the International Residential Code IRC, the International Energy Conservation Code IECC, the International Existing Building Code IEBC, the Uniform Plumbing Code UPC, the National Electrical Code NEC, the National Mechanical Code IMC, the International Fuel Gas Code IFGC, and the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code ISPSC.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion from the commission? Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Shertliff,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
Aye.
Mayor Collins.
Aye.
The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. B, consider the demolition of a historic structure located within the historic district as categorized as being a contributing structure to the historic district located at 320 East Broadway. Historic Preservation Officer Pam Atato, you have the floor, and Historic Preservation Officer Kathy Macefield, you have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners.
Good evening.
I just have to get this PowerPoint going here. Okay, I guess it's probably easiest if I sit here because I don't have
Please.
a remote.
Please.
My name is.
Uh-oh.
Hold on, there we go. My name is Pam Attardo. I'm the City County Historic Preservation Officer and staff for the Heritage Tourism Council. This historic demolition ordinance applies to houses listed with the National Register. The Hedges House is a contributing structure to the Rodney Street part of the Helena Historic District. 2 hearings were held before the Heritage Tourism Council on July 12th and August 16th, 2022. This is the front of 320 East Broadway. This is the south elevation. The home is located on the northwest corner of North Rodney and East Broadway. This is a current photograph. You can see this is the Rodney Street elevation or east elevation. The house was, Hedges House was built in 1878 as a single family home. This photo here is from the 1880s. The house is Italianate style, and it's highly significant for its association with pioneers Cornelius and Edna Hedges. Hedges is of local, state, and national significance. He arrived in Virginia City in 1864 and made his way to Helena in 1865. He was one of the first lawyers to practice in Helena, and he served as a U.S. attorney. He was the editor of the Helena Daily Herald newspaper. He chaired the committee to form the Helena Library. He was the trustee of the 1870 Territorial Fair in Helena. He was the co-founder of one of the co-founders of the Montana Historical Society. He was the superintendent of public schools for 8 years, beginning in 1872, and the first superintendent of public instruction. He was a probate judge for the Lewis and Clark County from 1875 to 1880. He's the most famous person you've probably never heard of. He didn't amass a fortune, but rather lent his talents to causes that uplifted fellow citizens. Hedges was part of the 1870 Washburn-Doane expedition to the Yellowstone region. According to his friend Nathaniel Langford, he was the first Yellowstone superintendent. Cornelius spoke up and said there ought to be no private ownership of any portion of that region, but that the whole of it ought to be set apart as a great national park. Hedges Peak in Yellowstone National Park is named for him. That happened in 1895, and he's known as the father of the national park system. The Hedges House was converted to a fourplex by his son in 1922 and then became a funeral home, and it was eventually returned to a fourplex. That is its current use. The north apartment experienced a fire in December of 2018, and the structure has been vacant since. You see the first floor here. There is no smoke or fire damage on the first floor. This is the second floor, southeast apartments. Again, no smoke or fire damage. There is water damage to the ceilings caused by the fire hoses used to take care of the fire. There's water damage to the ceilings of this portion of the southeast apartment. You can also notice that the paint is peeling, again, really obvious here, just because that happens when you turn the heat off in a home. This is the northwest apartment fire damage. So this is where the fire started in a heating unit and it spread to the attic. The HTC report, the HTC being the Heritage Tourism Council, report to the City Commission includes 2 letters from Derek Brown, professional engineer, that state, and the first one is a January 2nd, 2019 letter to the fire marshal who did not condemn the structure. Access to the main floor should pose no risk to people. Most of the second floor is relatively safe except for the center north side room. That's the room that we see right in front of us here. Damage to the remainder of the structure appears to be limited to water damage and the destruction of the ceilings to extinguish the fire. A second letter from Derek Brown, a professional engineer, dated February 8th, 2019, gives recommendations to repair the building and return it to use as an apartment building. The demolition permit states that the structure sustained substantial fire damage. You can see some charring and blackening in the attic here. There's one timber that you can see charring in the bottom photo there. It's the one that is vertical next to in front of the stairs. Mr. Brown's letters do not indicate that there was substantial fire damage. The applicants purchased the structure the summer after the fire, but did not tarp the roof to prevent further water damage and the current pigeon infestation. The applicants attended a pre-application meeting in June 2019 and submitted a signed application in June 2022. The building has remained open to the elements during this 3-year period. Just as an example, I'm showing you a photograph here of the Restore, which burned in 2015, and it had substantial fire damage and was repaired and restored to its original use. The demolition ordinance asks how the applicant proposes to protect the surrounding neighborhood if demolition is proposed. The Rodney Street neighborhood portion of the Helena Historic District is Helena's oldest neighborhood. And what happened was in 1864, we had about 1864 to 1874, Helena experienced about a fire a year. Some were really substantial. So people started to move up in about 1865 to this area to avoid the fires. There are 64 affordable apartment units within a 1-block radius of 320 East Broadway, including the 4 in the Hedges house. The applicant proposes 8 market rate units that don't meet the definition of affordable. So I'm going to give you kind of a virtual tour here of the neighborhood. This is structures to the west of the Hedges house along the north side of Broadway. This is looking west along the south side of Broadway. Looking south along the west side of South Rodney. And switching across the street south along the east side of South Rodney. Structures to the east of the Hedges house along the south side of Broadway. Structures to the east of the Hedges house along the north side of Broadway. Structures to the east of Hedges along the east side of North Rodney and the corner of Broadway. And this is the apartments that are located along North Rodney Street. This would be behind the Hedges house. The majority of those homes were built by well-known pioneers. The earliest build date is 1865. You'll notice that a lot of the early pioneers built homes there and then sometimes went over to the west side or other portions of Helena. Houses in the area reflect Helena's early development. The homes in much of the surrounding neighborhood retain their historic integrity, but demolition of the Walker Reinig house, which you see up in the upper left-hand corner here, in 1989 created a break in the historic streetscape and spurred the current demolition ordinance. Demolishing the Hedges house, which is located at the major intersection of Broadway and Rodney, would erode the historic fabric and sense of place and have significant adverse impacts on the historic district. If enough structures in the historic district are demolished, it is possible that a portion of it could be removed from the National Register. This is a slide of the applicant's cost of rehabilitation versus new construction. You'll see that it's about a $300,000 difference. It's less, $300,000 less to rehabilitate than to build new construction. This is the applicant's proposed structure for 8 units on the corner of East Broadway and North Rodney. So you'll see on the front part of it is the south side, which is the Broadway side. And then to the right over there, you'll see the North Rodney side or east side of the building. The Heritage Tourism Council did not recommend approval of this design as an alternative to demolition and new construction. The applicant could add an addition to the west and north sides of this existing structure to achieve the 8 units. There's nothing in the ordinance that commits the applicant to build the structure shown on the plan. Once demolition occurs, once it's gone, it's gone. 320 East Broadway is the only remaining structure associated with Hedges and the only National Register listed home on a nationally significant person in Helena. The homes of Charlie Pride, Myrtle Loy, L. Ron Hubbard, and Gary Cooper are not listed on the National Register. The HTC unanimously recommended denial of the demo permit at 2 public hearings based on the fact that, based on Hedges' local, state, and national significance, and the fact that the applicant presented no documentation that the structure is structurally unsound despite repeated requests. The HTC recommended the alternative of conditional approval as contained in its reports to the city, but the city attorney has stated that the demolition ordinance doesn't provide for conditional approval. In the past 5 years, 2 buildings have been demolished that are currently vacant lots. And this was several years ago. I would like to refer you to the planning director's memo dated August 22nd, 2022, as amended September 12th, 2022. It's the fourth attachment to the agenda, which recommends that the commission consider the recommendations of both the HTC and the Heritage Tourism and the Heritage Preservation Officer, which supersedes the cover sheet to the agenda dated August 24th, 2022. And I am happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Hurtado. Comments or questions from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Please go ahead, Commissioner.
It was a very large packet, so forgive me if I just missed something, but I was looking for any public comment that may have been submitted during any of the various phases of the process that perhaps I'm not seeing. Was there any public comment received either in our packet or anywhere else that we might consider?
Yes, there was quite a bit of public comment. It's located within your packet.
Okay, I'm struggling to find it in there, but I will keep looking. Thank you.
Okay. I could try and find it on the agenda.
You can, Commissioner, you can start from page 313. Quite a few there.
Thank you. I must have gone right past it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Collins.
Do we have any other comments from the commission? Okay, do we have any public comments? Please line up and
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Tarter. And remember, you have 2 minutes.
Mr. Mayor, if I might for just a moment. For those individuals that are wishing to make public comment online, I would ask you to please change your name if you can to your first and last name. If you need assistance with that, we can also ask you to announce your name upon your mic being allowed.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Commission. My name is Chandler Padgett. I'm a restoration apprentice at Preserve, Montana, located at 316 Floor Avenue. We're a nonprofit. And I have a letter from our director, Sherry Justo, who couldn't be here today. Dear Mayor Collins and Helena City Commissioners, we write to respectfully ask you to deny the demolition permit request for the Cornelius Hedges residence, one of Helena's most historic homes. We are based in downtown Helena and work statewide to help communities save and protect historic places. On July 11th, our team met with Mr. David Blackman of Bent Tree Enterprises. We toured and discussed the house and offered to help. We even bought a structural engineer to provide a current review of the building's condition in August at no cost to them, but Bentry declined to have this done. The Hedges house is one of Helena's most significant early residences, outstanding in the historic Rodney Street courthouse district, where the Myrna and all the neighbors are working to turn the neighborhood around. They deserve the strong support of a city that backs their efforts and stands behind its preservation ordinance and staff. From an economic development perspective, that prominent corner is perfect for a vibrant mixed use or commercial rehab rather than 8 housing units. And so we are stepping forward with a solution today. Preserve Montana is prepared to do the needed structural investigation, and based on that assessment, if no one else is willing to take on this beleaguered building, acquire the Hedges house as our next revolving historic property. Unfortunately, when Bentry bought the property, they took on a very historic building that was damaged but fixable. However, instead of mothballing or repairing, they neglected the house for 4 years. They now want to tear it down, contending that safe construction will require removal of the majority of walls, floor, and roof structure, resulting in essentially a new building. And because of alterations suffered over time, the house is no longer very historic. We question the first statement and challenge the second. First, no one denies that significant repairs are needed to reverse the fire damage to this house. The previous owner cleaned it up and obtained an engineering report that did not call for a radical transformation into essentially a new building. Rather, Derek Brown outlined a straightforward plan to carry out repairs and return the house to useful condition. In fairness, the owners probably didn't realize how historic the building truly is, but now we can all acknowledge that fact. As to the condition and ongoing neglect of the house, you might ask, did they cover the hole in the roof to prevent rain and snow damage to the building? Did they close up the building to keep the pigeons out? Did they seek grants, tax credits, and outside assistance to help them preserve the house? If the answer to all these questions is no, then we suggest that this property does not need a demolition permit. It needs an intervention. And that is exactly what your demolition ordinance is designed for. You have the authority to deny this permit, delay this project for 6 months, and help the owners to do better. We are serious about this. Preserve Montana has the capacity and expertise to help find funding and a preservation-minded binder if a new structural assessment deems it feasible, or to restore this house ourselves. It's what we do, and we are ready for our next project. Please deny the permit, and instead let's all work together to forge a vision of beauty, heritage, and economic vitality in the heart of the historic Rodney Street neighborhood. Sincerely, Chair Justo.
Thank you, sir.
Can I have the copies of this letter if you would like?
Pass on to the clerk, please. Next.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Chris Holmes, Executive Director of the Myrna Loy, where we have conducted a 2-year creative placemaking project to revitalize the Rodney Street community through art and community engagement. And I just want to say 3 things in my 2 minutes. Number 1, this proposed apartment building is a great project, but it's in the wrong place. The corner of Broadway and Rodney Street is a gateway corner to the historic Rodney Street district that's been identified and documented and celebrated by the city as well as by other bodies, and now is in a period of creative revitalization. This is not the place to demolish a historic building to erect a 3-story 8-plex that could sit on any town, on any street in any town, anywhere. Demolition of the Hedges home goes against the goals outlined in the city's own urban redevelopment district project to revitalize the Rodney Street. In 2018, Sharon Haugen at Community Development led a series of public meetings to launch the urban redevelopment district project. And the overwhelming message that was heard was the people want to preserve the quirky historic nature of Rodney Street. That theme became one of the goals of the whole redevelopment project and is one of the reasons that the Myrna Loy and the city partnered to create our creative placemaking project. In that spirit, the city also went the extra mile to invest in historic streetlights in Rodney Street to uphold this goal, this stated goal. And I think the planning department either didn't know that or didn't remember it when they recommended to approve the demolition of the Hedges home. The second thing I want to reiterate is that there are available options at the ready. We just heard from Preserve Montana, who has statewide expertise and has rehabbed houses much more damaged than this one. There are engineers, architects, investors, funders at the ready to preserve and rehab this home and return it to its historic character and charm and dignity for the neighborhood. All we lack is the will of the owners. It's been said that the Hedges home has undergone too many changes over the years. It's been used for too many purposes, even a funeral home. But this is what good buildings do. The Myrnaloy used to be the jail. The livery building used to be a feed store. Buildings with structural integrity and historic importance can serve the community in many ways. That is an asset, not a problem. What the people of Rodney Street want on this corner and what they have expressed to us in visioning sessions and neighborhood meetings is for this gateway corner to become a restaurant, maybe a boutique shop with apartments upstairs. That would be a mixed use work-live place with charm and dignity that will invite people into the newly revitalized Rodney Street project. The third thing I want to say is what we have seen in Rodney Street in the last couple of years is a neighborhood that truly loves and appreciates their sense of place. They know the character of the Rodney Street neighborhood. They love it. They want to preserve it and will work to preserve it. This neighborhood has come together to build and grow and define its own future. And the work that we have seen them do is incredible. This does not happen in other neighborhoods, in other creative placemaking projects across the country, and it should not be dismissed. These neighbors created 23 public artworks, attended workshops and visioning sessions. They planned, deliberated, rolled up their sleeves, worked and celebrated together out of true love of Rodney Street's unique personality. People care about what happens here. People care what comes down, what they lose, and what will be built in its place. Neighbors carried flower pots to each other up and down the street to fill the Rodney Street district with flowers this summer. Local teenagers made the art that you now see on the boarded up windows of the Hedges house. One neighbor mowed that lawn this summer. This is a place where the dumpsters are works of art. People love Rodney Street and they care about what is happening here. And I don't want this city to underestimate what a rare and incredible thing that is in any city, anywhere. If you vote to approve this demolition permit, you will be telling the people of Rodney Street that all that love and all that care and all that community engagement really doesn't mean that much. And you'll be telling the broader Helena community that preservation of our built heritage is great if you want to do it, but if you don't, that's okay too.
Do you want to wrap up, ma'am?
Yes, this 8-plex apartment building is a great project. We need housing. It should go somewhere else. And on behalf of this vibrant, excited, community-based Rodney Street neighborhood, I urge you, please do not approve the demolition of this savable historic home. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Jill Van Alstein, and I'm a resident of Helena. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. I am from out of state, and when I moved here in 1986, one of the reasons that I accepted the job and stayed was because of the charm and character of Helena. It provides this beautiful backdrop. It provides this connection to history. I remember moving here and learning about the Marlowe Theater from many, many people, and was so sad I never got to see the Marlowe Theater, all the beautiful buildings that went away in urban renewal. So here's another one, and I'm worried that this will be a precedent for further demolition. I have also seen what Chris Holmes talked about, the beautiful artwork and writing of an eclectic mix of ages and genders in, advocating for that neighborhood that's at the Myrtleloy. As a teacher, I would like to say that learning about Cornelius Hedges here in recent weeks is like a walk through history. And you can see that it would be much more difficult as a teacher to teach about Yellowstone National Park and Montana's heritage and Helena's heritage just in an abstract way. Let's get on the computer again, when you can take them to the actual house. You can show them that. You can talk about the Bridger Trail. You can talk about the Masons. You can talk about the Public Library, the Historical Society, Yellowstone National Park, and all. It's amazing that one person can take us through history in that way. So I would just like to point out, as far as the owners, that was a historic building or district when it was purchased. From my perspective, I don't see how an 8-plex is that much different than a 4-plex. And thank you for listening to our comments. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
How's it going? I'm John Brogan. I'm a historic preservation carpenter here in Helena. And after reviewing the photos with the historic preservation officer, Pam, I believe the building is able to be restored. That's, again, based on photos, but from what I can see, it seems that there are a lot of homes here in Helena that personal homeowners are kind of taking over and restoring them themselves that are in way worse shape. So I do believe that building is restorable. I do think what makes Rodney Street area unique is the historic homes and businesses around that area. And I think putting an 8-plex smack dab in the middle of that with like its modern siding is just kind of ruin the feel of that neighborhood. I think that this is a good project, and I think we need affordable housing here in Helena. I would maybe argue, I don't know if this would be affordable housing more sold at a premium, but I think somewhere else in Helena would be a good place for this project. And I think that we can continue to have a multifamily house there and maintain the historic charm of that street and of this home, and kind of have two wins there. So I would recommend denying the demolition permit. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, my name is Charlie Carson. I own a lot of Rodney Street. And I oppose this because I really think the Cornelius Hedges is a very prominent early pioneer of Helena history and Montana history. Everything that was said is very important. We just can't keep erasing our historic structures here in Helena. Urban renewal, in the 70s destroyed downtown, and everybody's still devastated about that. There is one thing that's not been said about Cornelius Hedges. He was highly educated. He was Harvard and Yale educated. I reiterate everything Chris Holmes says, and I believe that this structure should be saved. I made an offer to the current owners, very fair market value. Whether they rehab it or me is what I'd like to see done. But I believe the structure should be saved. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor Collins, members of the commission. My name is Chris Averill, spelled Averill. I'm the chair of the Helena, Lewis and Clark County Heritage Tourism Council, and just want to reiterate 3 points briefly. One, a recommendation to deny this demolition permit comes after much public comment and testimony at our 2 public hearings. I appreciate Commissioner Reed asking about where they are in the agenda, because it is a long agenda, but you'll note that there are many civic leaders who have testified this evening, as well as in letter, email, and at our previous hearings, very passionately about this project and the need to deny the demolition request. Secondly, I would note that your denial, as the Historic Preservation Officer Attardo mentioned, only denies this for 6 months. I would say that as the Tourism Council, as well as I'm speaking on behalf of the Preservation Officer, I'm sure would be more than happy to work with the applicants to help them acquire some of the things they would need to review this process and to avail themselves of tax credits and other opportunities that would help make the decision for them to preserve this important structure. And third, I would note, as was also mentioned, that this is an important entryway to our historic district, and there is the possibility of by losing too many of these structures, we could lose this historic district on the National Register. We want to try to find a way to maintain the charm and character that contribute to this historic district, while also rightly understanding the need for housing. I would just note, as I was looking up here, this building predates even the Capitol, our beautiful Capitol building. So think of what we would lose if we were to simply demolish this. Understanding it's a large project, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But I think it's safe to say we at the council would be happy to work with the applicant or whoever the owner is if they decide to sell, to avail themselves of the opportunities that would make it a much easier process for restoring and rehabilitating this important structure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor,
Good evening.
Commissioners. My name is Michael O'Neill. I live at 621 Hillsdale Street in the neighborhood of this historic building. I would urge you to deny the demolition permit this evening. I think this property, given that it's the corner of Rodney and Broadway, is such a unique structure. We've heard about the historical significance. And I think I would view this rather than a denial. It's really an opportunity for all parties, the building owners and this community, to come together to preserve a bit of history. And one thing is clear, we're not making any more history necessarily. So once it's gone, it's gone. So thank you for your support.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any other public comments?
We are the applicant. So I would appreciate enough time to, it's not restricted to the 2 minutes.
Would you give your name and
David Blackman. I'm represented tonight with my partner, Matt Roberts, and our architect, Mike Dowling. We came here today to ask for the recommendation to approve our ability to move forward with the demolition of the property located at 320 Broadway. We have spent the past 3 years attempting to produce an acceptable recommendation of a replacement structure that would complement the neighborhood where the existing building is located, as instructed by the representative of the Heritage Tourism Council. We feel we have gone above and beyond the following the historic guidelines, thus homage to the historic relevance of this site. So I would like to give you the history as we know it and the obstacles we have been faced with in attempting to satisfy all who have concerns about preserving our great history in Helena. The Cornelius Hedges residence is purported to have been built about 1878, according to the Helena Historic District Architectural Inventory form. It was built as a single-family residence. This balloon-framed home was originally veneered with brick. After 1935 earthquake, it was replaced with clapboard siding. In 1936, redone. In 1984 with a masonite siding. There was a cupola on the top that was removed sometime in the 1970s. The original windows have been replaced with smaller windows. The east side entry has been removed and the west wing was added in about 1930. After Mr. Hedges passed away and when his wife moved out, the house served then as a funeral home and boarding house from the 30s into the 60s. The house fell into foreclosure and was purchased and made into a 4-unit apartment complex in about 1992. On 12/26 of 18, the Hedges residence had a catastrophic fire. The attic space has extensive damage. From all who have surveyed the damage suggests that the roof would have to be removed to attempt any salvage efforts. A large portion of the ceiling joists would have to be replaced. The rim boards on the west, south, and north sides are found to be heavily damaged, and the lion's share needs to be replaced. Due to balloon framing, one section is damaged all the way down to the foundation from the second floor in which the fire started. Finally, the apartment where the fire started has extensive fire damage. This damage can be seen to finger out beyond the apartment space through the floor, ceiling, and walls. Within a day, Mr. Chakopoulos filed a claim for this fire loss, and the property was initially inspected, but it was very cold, and it was agreed due to all the ice from fighting the fire that the inspection and claim processing would be done when weather was more applicable. All the ice prevented the normal course of mitigation, and Mr. Chakopoulos could have done. The final assessment was done though, and the claim written on or about 3/12 of 2019. Bent Tree Enterprises was retained by Mr. Chakopoulos to assist in dealing with the insurance company. It was found that the cost of repair went well above the policy limits, leaving him with a difficult decision. He was also challenged by the fact that the City of Helena head inspector at the time, Joe Pallister, and the fire marshal, Lou Antonok, concurred and placed an uninhabitable notice on the building. The engineering report we have was stapling away, done while weather conditions were still very difficult, so complete assessment from an engineer was not completed. The findings were recited to support the findings of John Pallister and Lou Antonok to feel that further supports that we feel further support the fact that the most honorable course is to remove and replace the structure. Due to all the water fighting the fire, the John Pallister, the city head inspector at the time, stated that the wiring would have to be removed and replaced due to the water migration through the jackets of the wire. He found that the structure had balloon framed. He stated the balloon framing would have to be corrected to current building codes. Fire breaks in the exterior walls, and the balloon framing would have to be corrected. Areas that need the fire rated walls, ceiling, and floor breaks between the units would be required by code. Mr. Pallister stated that due to freezing conditions, a great deal, if not all, the water and sewer systems would have to be replaced to ensure the soundness and bring the systems into current code compliance. The basement is the stacked rock era, or is of the stacked rock era. And again, with all the water and obvious previous attempts to shore up these crumbling basement walls, an engineer would have to make recommendations on how to shore up and make them safe from the basement floor up. Comment was made that until a core was done, no one could be sure the footings required to have the ability to carry the weight of what we are doing to meet code. Finally, tests were done concerning hazmat materials, and it was discovered that we had asbestos and lead paint mitigation that would have to be done. This is expensive and a time-hungry endeavor. Mr. Chakopoulos, now faced with a very large rebuild requirement, approached our team, and after discussions of the existing extensive undertaking, we came to an agreement to purchase the property. And at no time during the tendering of this sale was it known that the property was subject to the preserved Montana conditions. When we learned this was when we approached Mr. Chakopoulos, he too claimed that he had no knowledge of this situation. We had several times during ownership made changes and if you will, improvements. No one along the way ever suggested that he had to follow any guidelines in this process. Our team is made of 3 long-term residents here in Helena, myself, Matt Roberts, Jim Anderson, and Matt and I are the contracting arm of the group and active in building homes around Helena, roofing and remodeling. We are not, as has been suggested, some sort of airplane hangar builders, industrial builders. We're just three guys. We're not from out of state, and our mission is not to invade Helena to cherry pick properties. We saw an opportunity to make an investment in ourselves and our community and complement the neighborhood and create a property that we and the community would be proud of. And it would serve the community hopefully as many years as the original Hedges house has done. When we started this back in 2019, we put together a demolition permit and submitted to the city. They almost immediately told us that we had to have the endorsement and approval from Prana Tardo's office. We visited with Mrs. Tardo and she explained that in order for us to for her to endorse our application, we would have to submit a rendition of what would be built in its place. If we did not satisfy Mrs. Tardo, we were told it would be near impossible to get the permit because the powers pretty well follow her lead. And if we tried to force that permit and it failed, we would have to wait 6 months to reapply. For 3 years, we have tried to find the combination to the ever-changing riddle of an approved rendering to be attached to our permit request. Over the course of this past 3 years, the economic changes have been drastic. The pandemic literally stalled our efforts. Thus, the decision was made to wait and see what was coming next. It appeared that these new prices are here to stay for the foreseeable future. With this revelation, we went back to work employing Mike Dowling, an architect here in Helena. He took on the project to see if he could see what he could do. He took the historic guidelines and began designing a structure that paid tribute to the past, functional for the present, and robust enough to challenge the Hedges building for time and service. We think he has satisfied all of the above. The southwest corner of the building will be exactly where the original building was. Going north from there along Rodney Street, the same bay bump out will exist. The windows will be very similar in size to the original. And the location of the original, both on the east and north sides of this property will be exactly where they were. The biggest difference is the project will no longer be viable as a 4-unit family structure. Mike Dowling found that we can still pay homage to the structure and its historical importance, yet make it an 8-unit multifamily structure instead. This discovery put us back on course to realizing our dream of owning an income-producing property. What is also confusing is that it seems a great deal of effort has been put into salvaging the structure itself historically correct as possible. Yet now we're being told that through a series of photos that would build a structure that looks like many flat apartments in Helena, not boarding houses, which this was, which is what our design promotes and pays homage. They are not in the neighborhood, but suggestion says they would be more acceptable than we are proposing. These are just our observations. When we started this project, the best guess estimate to tear down, mitigate the asbestos and lead paint would be $800,000 to $950,000. Today, the numbers are between 1 and 1.4 million. As the years have ticked by, and about 60 days ago, we calculated again, and the tear down and rebuild a similar structure, a 4-unit, would be approximately $1.575 million. At these rates, we cannot pay a note, much less maintenance, insurance, empty rentals, etc. We look at the 8-unit, we estimate approximately 1.9 million to build. This is still hard, but with proper management, it is doable. What is disconcerting is the building has undergone so many changes with no regard to historic importance. That is unrecognizable to the predecessor. So now somehow we are at fault for not respectfully, regardless of price, being willing to overhaul this eyesore to the original glory. We think the true legacy of Cornelius Hedges is that Helena sits between two national parks as a result of his efforts. The intended plaque we would install would tell this history and embellish, and I messed up there, but embellish its true place in history. We have learned in the discussions that occurred in the committee meeting that was held on August 16th is that their charge is to evaluate whether a building can or cannot be salvaged. Theirs is not to decide whether it makes economic sense. We are told that is your charge. So yes, the building could be salvaged. A building that sits on a rock-walled basement that, by the way, was also damaged with the fire and all the water. It will not continue to continue to flex and create continual maintenance requirements. We will not be able to command the price point needed to tender the banknote, and the building will not have the longevity that is associated with the size note required to facelift the existing structure. Anything short of a full replacement potentially runs the costs even higher. We're proposing that we increase the existing living square footage of approximately 4,076 square feet to 7,394 square feet. This consists of a first and second floor configuration. We are open to and intend to explore the opportunity to create first floor and office space with the second floor as apartments. We feel that Hedges Flats, as we've deemed it, will make an attractive addition to the historic district. Up and coming executives will have easy access to the walking mall, mountain hiking, biking, etc. Being just one block from the courthouse, the commercial aspects could also have an attraction to the legal sector, and the Myrna has expressed some interest in some office space. We are catty-corner to them on the same block. With the building completed, we're intending to erect a sign that does give that brief history of the site and how certain points of the structure are as they were in their original state. In the last meeting, we had a great grandson of Mr. Hedges at that meeting. We found it interesting that his comment was based on stories the family had handed down over the years. He said that it was always talked about how Cornelius was such a forward thinker. His involvement in the National Park Program, moving schools forward and becoming the first superintendent of the schools of Helena, and his proactive work in getting a library started here in Helena. He says, based on all these stories of my grandfather, he would have to be a proactive in moving our city forward. I think he would be very much in favor of getting that structure removed and replaced, especially when there's going to be efforts in paying homage to the site. The other issue that was presented was that if the building is removed, it would remove that section of the historic district from being included. So what we found was that many of the buildings have been changed so dramatically that they do not qualify as a historic district home. So all these remodels that have happened were allowed to happen without following the historic district clauses. So that's putting unfair, or the request is unfairly causing us to shoulder this responsibility, no matter the cost. We can only wonder why these other structures were not held to that scrutiny. Helena really needs to be proactive in partnering with people like us who are willing to recognize and respect the past and preserve the architecture that has made Helena what it is, and a building that will last as long as the original structure that seems more of a win-win than any other path we could explore. In conclusion, we're just three guys who pooled their life savings to make a nice historical complementing multifamily building, Hedges Flats. This is not some fly-by-night project we started a few weeks ago. We've been here for 3 years, and we've tried to honor, understand, embellish the direction, the council, and take counsel and opinion that has been brought to the table. We implore you to truly digest the facts, understand the economic impact, appreciate the willingness to honor the importance of the historic site, and grant the continuance of properly submitting our application for approval. On the last two pages, you see the drawing there, and the shaded area that you see is the existing structure. So you can see what is white in there would be what is the amount of space required for us to turn this into an 8-plex versus the 4-plex. Are there any questions?
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any other public comments?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'm sorry. I own the direct property to the north. And according to the plans that they have, if this is approved, I would like to have some assurances of runoff and how that's handled. I have basement apartments there with daylight basement windows. And then the water, from my understanding, is going to go down the alleyway. And when it hits the Myrna Loy area, it turns into an ice jam today. And this will just add to it. So if approved, can that be addressed? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any other public comments?
I do have two hands raised online, if I may.
Okay. Who are they?
First up, I have Alexis Julian.
Alexis, you have the floor.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Alexis Julian, and we are the owners of the home directly across the street from the Cornelius Hedges home on the east side. And we have attended the last few meetings, and we are adamantly opposed to this new structure going in, mainly because we are one of 3 single-family homes on this block, and there is already like severe parking issues and congestion issues. And there was when there was the 4-plex as well, and it does not fit into the neighborhood or give us green space. And then the other comments, I want to make this pretty brief. Chris and Pam have already said a lot of what we wanted to say, was that the new owners haven't really listened to the public comment of people who are directly tied to the neighborhood. And it has been Charlie Carson and a lot of his employees that have taken care of the outside of the home, the new landscaping done by the city, et cetera. And so we just wanted to be on public record. We have been before that, we are part of our neighborhood. We love our neighborhood, and we really don't see that this being a good fit here. And that was all. Just thank you all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any others?
Next, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have an individual listed as 19 South Rodney. I'd ask you to please announce your full name for the record.
V Yang, Veeyang. I have lived in Helena in my home on 19 South Rodney for 5 years. I am a Montana, been born here, lived here my whole life, lived in Helena for about 8 years now. And on that, the entire time I have lived in Helena, I have lived on Rodney Street. I work at a community mental health center. My job is very important to me. I am the Tennessee support specialist at my job at Many Rivers Whole Health, formerly known as Center for Mental Health for the PAC team. My fears around this structure being torn down is that there's an opportunity still for this 4-plex to be affordable for this neighborhood. I do not want to see gentrification efforts made in my neighborhood. I have housed many clients near me because it has allowed me the opportunity to keep close watch and help my neighborhood to stay safe and to be able to provide resources directly into my neighborhood. I have worked extensively in mental health, and a lot of my clients are in this neighborhood, and I think that building an expensive new building that might be an eightplex, and I am grateful for the idea of placing more housing in this area. I truly am. However, it needs to be affordable. And Charlie Carson, of anything anyone could say to him, he has kept this neighborhood affordable. He has made sure that there is always housing for those who need it most. And I cannot trust a new person to come into this neighborhood and care as much as Charlie and I do about the specific population that lives in this area. We are sprinkled with affluent people. Public health officer Brenda Neiman lives very close to me. I live on the street there, and there is a lot of disparity between incomes in this neighborhood, but there is one thing that is clear in this area, and that is that we are neighborly and we very well take care of each other and our community that we have directly around Rodney Street, Davis, and Ewing. And I want to see that be honored by opposing the demolition of this building. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do we have any others?
Last, Mayor and Commissioners, I have Ashley Moon.
Who?
Ashley Moon.
You have the floor, Ashley.
Hello, my name is Ashley Moon. I am a Helena born and raised citizen here, and I have been part of the Rodney Street Is project, serving as an artist, designer, and researcher, looking at and working with the residents of the Rodney Street neighborhood. And it's been an honor to serve my hometown and not only facilitate efforts to help bring neighbors together, but also looking at how we can preserve the history of the area. And I would just strongly urge you to deny this demolition permit. And I echo everything that everyone has said, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Mayor, I have no other hands raised online.
Thank you. Commissioners?
Mr. Mayor. This is a really tough one for me. I'll say I grew up in Helena. I was raised in a home that was built in 1884 on Howie Street. As I said, grew up here all my life, so appreciate very, very much the history of Helena. I worked for a department whose history, the fire department, whose history goes back to 1865. And throughout my career, I did a tremendous amount of historical research on that department and consequently on Helena's history. So the historical sentiments that have been expressed here tonight are certainly not lost on me. But on the flip side of that, I'm also sympathetic to someone who has taken, or some investors who have taken a risk on a building that sustained a lot of damage. Not only fire, but water. And so I'm just going to leave that comment there. But I do have some questions, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe a combination of staff and of others. But so I was in reviewing the packet, I reviewed the code online relative to the demolition. And I'm not sure that it was entirely clear to me at what point Bent Tree made its complete application. And if there's a date as to that, I think I heard June 2022.
Can we get Ms. Otardo?
Or this, sure.
Mayor and Commissioners. So the complete application was made, it was deemed complete June 9th. It was submitted by the applicant on June 7th. Prior to that,
Which
go ahead.
year? This year?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess the follow-up to that for city attorney or Ms. Attardo is in the demolition code ordinance. It says the commission shall then approve or deny the demolition application within 60 days after a complete application has been submitted. So are we within that time frame?
Mayor, Commissioners, the 60 days would have expired if that is the case. June 9th, 60 days thereafter would be August.
So does that cause us any problems in our consideration here tonight?
Mayor, Commissioner Logan, there is nothing in the code that says what the consequence of not making that 60 days would be. I think it does raise some questions, and it's fair that yours is that you have those questions. The only authority that this commission actually has in acting on this is to deny or approve the demolition application, but there is no consequence here on what does occur if it doesn't make the 60 days.
Okay, thank you. So relative to, you just hinted at, one of the recommendations of the Heritage Tourism Council is if we do approve this demolition permit, that certain conditions be met. And if I understood correctly from the packet material, there is an opinion, I believe, from Eric Coate that indicates that ours, as you said, is to either approve or deny the demolition. And we can't put conditions on that permit application. Is that accurate?
Mayor, Commissioner Logan, yes, I see it the same way. I read the same email and I see it the same way.
Okay, two more questions and then I'll let my colleagues jump in here. But so Ms. Attardo, from your perspective, has the application or the applicant met the requirement of the code? There were 5 legal description, property address and age of the structure, a written description and photographs and so on. There are 5 condition or requirements that the code has on a demolition application. So from your perspective, have they met that?
Yes, they filed a complete application. When they first submitted it, I had some additional comments and requests, and then they submitted that or made changes, and then I deemed it complete, and then the building division deemed it complete.
Okay.
Because the ordinance does not indicate who deems it complete. When we found a resolution way back when, this is a 1992 ordinance, it had stated in a resolution that the Heritage Tourism Council or Historic Preservation Council, as was at the time, made the decision of completeness.
Okay, thank you. And one last question, and I'm looking to City Attorney Doctor, if I shouldn't be asking that, please give me asking this question. Please give me the hand. But this is for the developer, because this is a question that for me jumps out. I mean, you're expressing your serious concern about should we deny this and having economic difficulties with trying to meet your financial obligations. So if we deny this, what are you going to do? I don't know if that's a fair question, or if we deny this demolition application, what are you going to do? And because, I mean, like I said, I sympathize with the plight that you're in economically or financially. So I don't know.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Yeah, before you go, Mr. Tardo, I just have a few questions. And if I'm wrong, just say, Mayor, you're wrong. Am I right? I think I heard you saying something about 8 units and they do not meet the definition of affordable.
Yes, if you take a look at the memo that was written by the Community Development Director, he stated that they were market rate, they were not affordable.
Okay. And if they were to build, and I also, if I'm wrong again, just say, Mayor, you're wrong. I heard you saying they could, if they wanted to maintain the structure, they could add the 4 units onto it and maintain it.
Yes, that would be possible.
What would be the historic integrity of that then?
Well, a lot of buildings have additions to them over the years. I mean, it kind of is the progression of the house as it is, or house or building as it is used. There are many structures. And when you build an addition onto a historic structure, you make it so that it complements the structure, but doesn't look like it was always there. You don't want to create what's called a false sense of history. You want to be able to look at it and say, oh, that was added later because it's a little different. It's not quite the same. You know, maybe it's a different siding. Maybe the house would be brick and the addition would be made out of clapboard or something like that. So additions exist. There are actually standards for them. The Secretary of the Interior has standards for additions, and that would be something that could be followed.
Okay, and does it matter which side the 4 apartments go?
Yeah, in general, you want to go with the less obvious side. So right now, if you look at the plan that we had on the PowerPoint, they have the addition stepped back and to the west, and that would be truly the best location for it. You really couldn't put much in the back because it's very close to the property behind it. And you don't want to put it on what's called a primary facade, which would be the front. And this building kind of has 2 primary facades because it fronts on Broadway, but it also has a streetscape it's a corner lot. It has a streetscape on Rodney as well, North Rodney. So you'd want to be on either the rear or the west side if you could.
Okay, I know in this document, the developers or the owners submitted, they said that the other issue that was presented was that if the building is removed, that it would remove the section of historic district from being included because too many other buildings have been changed and do not qualify. Is that accurate?
There are some non-contributing buildings on the east side of North Rodney. It just means they're non-contributing, but the district is still there. But if it gets to the point where enough buildings are removed, then a portion can be delisted. That's accurate. I'm not saying, I mean, I don't make that call. That's something that the state, actually the keeper of the record for the National Register makes that decision whether to delist or not.
So, my final question.
Sure.
So with these buildings that have been remodeled or added on or whatever it is, are they then resubmitted to the Historical Foundation, whatever, historical preservation nationally to reevaluate as to whether they still meet the historic integrity?
They haven't been submitted. It's a very time-consuming process, and these changes have been made within years.
you know, and some of them were non-contributing at the time that they were listed, that the district was listed in 1993. So there are many historic districts that have non-contributing buildings because number one, they've been altered so much that they're not identifiable at the time that they were built. They look so different from what they were first built as. Or number two, they were built there's a period of significance for a historic district. Like in Helena, it's 1864 to 1948. So any buildings listed, built after 1948 are not eligible for listing because it's outside of the period that they want to have the district represent.
Thank you. I thought I would have had my last question, but then you brought something else.
No worries.
So, if we were to have the national people come and evaluate as to whether these buildings that have been remodeled as historic, do you think those buildings will be considered historic, preserved, or the integrity will be maintained?
The existing buildings, you know, go ahead.
No, yeah, the existing buildings.
Well, they don't, so they don't really come, what happens is the State Historic Preservation Office makes a request to the national level, the National Register, and they make a decision based on photographs, whether these buildings should be delisted or not. But it actually has to be begun by the state. It doesn't happen automatically, and the keeper does not come to Rodney Street and say, they don't initiate it.
Okay. After this, I'm done, I promise you. We have a process to follow. And you stated that they met all the criteria.
Mhm.
So why are they being denied?
Well, they met all the criteria for the application. And then from there, we take a look at the design of it. We take a look at the neighborhood, the impacts on the neighborhood. And while I worked with with Mike Dowling, we didn't get to a point where the design, we have what are in Helena, what are called Helena's design guidelines for the historic neighborhoods. And as the historic preservation officer, I didn't feel that it had met the design guidelines, in particular the porches on the front facade, which the front facade, remember, is the primary facade. It's the most important one, whether it's historic or new. And I did not feel that the porches on the front fit in with complemented the neighborhood.
So if they were to go with your recommendation and they got another design that complemented the neighborhood, what would you do?
Well, still based upon, number one, they had told me that the building was not sound, was not structurally sound, but they did not produce anything that said that it was, and there was no structural report indicating that it was. We did have a couple of letters, which they gave me copies of, saying that the building actually could be repaired and that it wasn't, there wasn't substantial damage. So based upon that, that's what I based my recommendation on, the fact that there was nothing in fact, there was that proof that it was repairable. And also the design was not what I would recommend for the neighborhood. There was a lot of public comment at both hearings that they didn't like the design.
Thank you, Ms. Otardo.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead,
I
Commissioner.
think Ms. Otardo just said it. It was a question I had. I just wanted to make sure I had understood correctly. So just to say it one more time, it is your opinion that the building, in the absence of anything else, it is your opinion that the building can be rehabilitated or saved because there's been nothing submitted showing otherwise. Is that correct?
Yes. Derek Brown, he's a professional engineer. In 2019, shortly after the fire occurred in December of 2018, the former owner hired him, and he produced these two letters. They're actually within your materials.
Yeah.
And it indicated that the structure was indeed repairable.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do we have any other comments from the commission?
I've got one.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, for Ms. Sartardo, thank you very much for your time. Play devil's advocate. If the building is rehabilitated, would it still meet the designation for the historic property?
Yes, it would.
Okay. My second question is, I believe you'd mentioned that there is no guarantee if the building is torn down that they would follow the plan that they've provided.
Right. We've had a couple instances where applicants did not follow the design that they submitted. And there's 2 instances where the buildings were demolished and they are currently, this is 2017, 2018, they are currently empty, vacant lots right now.
Do you have any other comments from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, a couple questions for the developer, possibly, if they'd be willing to field them.
Sure.
Thank you. So just back to my question a bit ago, if we deny this, what are you gonna do?
Good question. We've kicked a number of ideas around, but at the current point in time, it's not a good scenario. We're sitting there with a pretty sizable investment. I just really care not to comment beyond that at this point. Yeah. If I've got just a moment, these decisions on when this application was submitted, it's always been our understanding, and if we misunderstood, then bad on us, I suppose. But it was always explained that until you have a rendering that is acceptable to the tourism group, your application is not worth submitting. So that submittal has taken 3 years to get to an approved rendition to attach to that demolition permit. And that's why it's as late as it is coming in. And right up until the last minute of the last meeting, we had theoretically an agreement or a nod from Mrs. Tardo that we had our rendition to a level that was acceptable, with some minute changes that could be agreed upon, like balconies and the like. Other than that, it was in an acceptable place. And then shockingly, it was denied. So that's the bouncing ball we've been chasing for 3 years.
Okay, Mayor, if I may follow up.
Please go ahead.
I guess in reference to my colleague's question about sort of honoring the historical integrity, I don't think there's anything saying requiring that, or as has been pointed out, it's not always the case that's honored. Care to comment on that?
Well, we came into it from the get-go wanting to build something that was similar to the area, not knowing the historic value at that point. But it was always the intent to blend with the community, blend with the architecture in that immediate area. So, everything in there was steep roofed and the like. So that was from almost the beginnings, that was what we were trying to do. And then when we found about all this history, we toyed with different names for the building, the Hedges building, and finally came up with Hedges Flats, trying to honor the historic presence there. And even recommended that we could put a plaque up that gave historic value or history of that spot. In the commission meeting, there was talk of, well, the Canadians come down in there and they've got a lot more tie to that particular spot than even we do. Well, okay, but how do they know that? There's no signage there now. There's never been. So we could put a sign up. They gave it a brief history like you see around, and that it wouldn't be a historic plaque because it doesn't apparently qualify for an actual historic spot. It's in the historic district, and we're learning that there's a big difference. So it's not got one of your little silver plaques that stands there, but we're we're excited to do that, to be tied to that, to say, hey, we built that place. Then it's got the historic history then that's can be talked about. Somebody can walk up and, hey, look at this. Here's that place we were reading about. So that was our intent. That's
I'm
what
sorry. Thank you, Mr. Blackman.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, thanks.
Yeah, one question for you, Mr. Manager. If we were to table this, what's the earliest time it can get back on the agenda?
Mayor, we have, because of the calendar, a commission meeting next week. It hasn't been finalized or put out yet, so I think the earliest possible time would be next Monday.
Would that be any inconvenience?
Not to city staff, Mayor. I think that if you choose to table it, I think that we have every opportunity to schedule it up at next Monday's commission meeting.
Commissioners?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead,
I've got
Commissioner.
one question for Mr. David Blackman, if that's okay?
Please.
Mr. Blackman? Sorry to bring you back up after you sat down. What is, based on some of the conversation or some of the testimony that was brought up, what is, I guess, preventing you, aside from selling the property, from building this building elsewhere in Helena?
Nothing.
Thank you, Mr. Blackman.
Any other final comments from the commission? We'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I will move to deny the granting of a demolition permit for the structure building located at 320 East Broadway.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any final discussion from the commission?
Mr. Mayor, I will simply say that I do not take that decision lightly. There's been some good discussion tonight. I think we all agree on the need for housing. But for me, the compelling factor is the fact that there's nothing stating the building cannot be saved. And given the rich history and the history of our town, I think that is not to be taken lightly. Thank you.
Any other final discussion from the commission? Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Shertliff,
Aye.
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Logan,
No.
Mayor Collins.
What happens when we have a tie again?
Mayor, a tie is a fail.
Oh, well, then. Aye.
The motion carries 3-1.
Is there anyone from the public wishes to address the commission?
Mr. Mayor, online, I do have Dr. Thomas with his hand raised.
Yes, Dr. Thomas, you have the floor. And again, our apology for last week.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Honorable Mayor, esteemed commissioners, and hardworking city employees. Because of recent events in the local area, I humbly and respectfully come before you this evening to emphasize selected salient points from the email I sent to all of you on or around September 13th. Earlier this month, the City of East Helena Planning Board met to holistically discuss its current pipeline of housing subdivision plans proposed to be constructed and sold within the next 10+ years as part of their efforts to look far beyond the next 2 to 4 years in East Helena's overall strategic planning efforts. The results of this meeting include the following points that I expect will soon receive substantive attention from the City of Helena. In addition to the already under construction 457 home subdivision approved well over 12 months ago, the current housing subdivision plans in the pipeline for the City of East Helena include over 2,000 new single-family homes. Based on 2021 census data, the average American family now has approximately 1.93 children. This means that without factoring in the ongoing shift to multi-generational households in single-family homes, the over 2,457 single-family homes planned for East Helena correlate to an estimated population increase from today of just over 1,800 residents to over approximately 9,000 residents, roughly half of them driving cars in and out of Helena on Helena-maintained roads every day, shopping and working in Helena grocery stores, restaurants, and other Helena businesses. As I reminded all of you in my September 13th email, our city presently has an infrastructure deficit of over $40 million, which continues to grow each day that we continue to delay developing and implementing a holistic strategic and financial action plan to address that infrastructure deficit as the Commission's #1 priority, since it not only benefits all Helena taxpayers, but is necessary for us to properly accommodate stakeholders in East Helena, the rest of Lewis and Clark County, Montana, and for global tourists wanting to visit the Helena area. As in recent past winters, a significant number of water infrastructure assets unexpectedly broke last winter, costing us dearly in the form of overtime and other emergency service costs because of our ongoing failure to plan. How many more water and sewer infrastructure assets will break during the coming winter season? How many more will need to break before we implement an immediate and long-term action plan? When we fail to plan, we plan to fail. Our city is better than this, and it is imperative to future generations of Hellenans that we immediately begin doing better. Many of us known to you remain available as civic-minded residents and business owners to provide you with substantive input in developing and implementing the action plan needed to address our growing list of over $40 million in infrastructure needs. And if some members of the Commission do not yet know me, I offer you the same open-door invitation I have previously offered to the mayor and other commissioners. None of us benefits from living in an echo chamber. If you do not agree with my comments this evening, then that is all the more reason we should plan to sit down and talk sooner rather than later about how we can begin working together for the well-being of all future Hellenans. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Do we have any others, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I have no other hands raised online and I have no written public comment at this time.
Any final comments from the Commission? Oh.
Since I'm here, Michael O'Neill, I'm Executive Director of the Helena Housing Authority. And I just take the opportunity to, I think we've invited you all to our Housing is Healthcare Fuse initiative events in mid-October. There's on the 18th, there's a open house at United Way. There's a landlord appreciation breakfast at Carroll on the morning of the 19th, doing a training on trauma-informed care and supportive housing. at lunchtime, 12 to 2 at Carroll Lower Campus. And then the next morning will be at Hometown Helena. But if you can join us for any of those, we'll make, I think you've received email invitations, but we'll make sure they'll go out again to you. But would welcome the whole commission and the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill. Do we have any other public comments? At this time, this meeting is adjourned.